Imagine walking through the echoing corridors of Vatican City at night. The marble floors are cold beneath your feet, the silence broken only by the faint creak of ancient hinges and the whisper of your own breath. Above you towers St. Peter's Basilica, that colossal monument to faith, power, and human ambition. Its golden dome catches the moonlight, but beneath it, hidden under layers of stone and secrecy, lies another world. A world few have ever entered. A world sealed not by accident of time, but by deliberate intent. This is the Vatican's secret archive, or, as it is officially known, the Archivum Secretum Vaticanum. Thousands upon thousands of shelves, stretching for more than 50 miles beneath the surface of the Holy See. Climate control vaults, locked cabinets, sealed doors that only a handful of men are ever permitted to open. The phrase secret archive alone conjures images of dust-covered tomes, cursed manuscripts, and knowledge so dangerous it could shatter empires if revealed. And for centuries, whispers have echoed through history that within these walls are the manuscripts the Vatican fears most. Writings that could change everything we think we know about religion, history, and even reality itself. But what lies behind those doors? And why does the Church guard them so fiercely? The Vatican's library is not some ordinary collection. It is the memory of Western civilization itself. Since the Middle Ages, popes, cardinals, and agents of the Church gathered not only religious texts, but the state's secrets of kings, the correspondences of emperors, the maps of explorers, the forbidden philosophies of heretics. When kingdoms fell, their treasures were taken. When ancient temples were abandoned, scrolls disappeared into Roman hands. And over the centuries, these treasures piled up, locked away in chambers few have ever glimpsed. Scholars estimate the archive contains at least 53 miles of shelving, filled with more than 35,000 volumes. And that is only what we are told. Now consider this. Most of the world's greatest libraries have burned or been destroyed. The Library of Alexandria, consumed by flames. The libraries of Baghdad, looted in war. Countless monasteries sacked, their wisdom scattered to the wind. But the Vatican? The Vatican has endured century after century, unbroken. If there was knowledge to be saved, forbidden or dangerous knowledge, were better for it to survive than here, under the shadow of St. Peter's Dome. Officially, the Vatican insists that there is nothing mysterious about the secret archive. The word secretum, in Latin, they remind us, simply means private. These are the Pope's personal papers, the correspondence of the Holy See, the records of centuries of administration. Dry, dusty, bureaucratic. But the human imagination has never been satisfied with that explanation. And perhaps with good reason. Because while the Vatican claims the archive is open to scholars, the reality is far more complex. Yes, researchers may apply for access. Yes, a handful of documents are shown each year, but entire sections remain permanently sealed. Certain manuscripts are said to be so fragile or so dangerous that they cannot be touched, and others, if they exist at all, are known only by rumor, documents whispered about but never acknowledged. And that is where the mystery begins. For centuries, writers, scholars, and conspiracy theorists alike have speculated about what the Vatican keeps hidden. Some believe it houses lost gospels that would undermine the Church's authority. Others whisper of pagan scrolls, rescued from burning temples, that reveal forgotten rites of Rome and Egypt. Still others speak of grimoires of demonology, locked away to prevent mankind from summoning forces too dark to name. There are stories of ancient maps charting continents long before Columbus, of prophetic manuscripts warning of cataclysms to come, of secret correspondences between the Vatican and the powers of the modern world, from Hitler to the CIA. And always, there's the lingering suggestion that somewhere in those endless shelves lies a manuscript that could change the course of human history. Picture for a moment what it must feel like to walk those hidden aisles. The scent of ancient vellum thick in the air. The weight of centuries pressing down from every side. A locked cabinet stands before you, its iron keyhole untouched for generations. What would you find if you could open it? A letter from a condemned heretic? A gospel declaring truths the world was never meant to hear? Or something stranger still, a text so alien, so otherworldly, that it calls into question the very fabric of reality? This is the allure of the Vatican's forbidden library. Not simply the documents we know exist, but the tantalizing thought of what else might lie beyond reach. What has been deliberately suppressed? What has been deliberately erased? And most importantly, why? To understand the power of secrecy, we must consider the power of the Church itself. For 2 millennia, the Vatican has been the beating heart of Christianity, shaping doctrine, guiding kingdoms, excommunicating rulers, and deciding which texts would be sacred scripture and which would be condemned as heresy. Control over knowledge is control over faith, and control over faith is control over empires. So is it any wonder that the Vatican might guard its most dangerous manuscripts with absolute vigilance? Imagine if tomorrow a gospel emerged proving that Jesus' teachings have been altered. Imagine if a scroll revealed forgotten rites, connecting Christianity to the mystery religions of Egypt. Imagine if a manuscript described celestial beings, not angels, but something far more technological, far more unsettling. What happened to faith? To governments? To civilization itself? And so, the locked doors remain. Generations pass. Popes come and go. And deep beneath the Vatican, the archive slumbers, its secrets untouched, or perhaps quietly studied by those permitted to know. What we can say for certain is this: there is no other collection on earth like it. A vault not only of history, but of mystery. A chamber where time itself is imprisoned in parchment and ink. And as long as those doors remain closed, humanity will always wonder, what lies in the Vatican's forbidden library? What manuscripts hide in its darkest corners? And what truths, if revealed, could change the story of the world forever? The story of the Vatican's secret archive does not begin in darkness. It begins, rather, in the radiant glow of the Renaissance, a time when popes not only ruled as spiritual leaders, but also as princes, scholars, and keepers of knowledge. The seeds of secrecy were planted in the late 15th century, when Pope Nicholas V envisioned a library that would house the greatest works of human thought. He dreamed of a collection that would rival, perhaps even surpass, the lost Library of Alexandria. His project laid the foundation for what we now call the Vatican Apostolic Library, a library not merely for devotion, but for civilization itself. But as the centuries passed, something curious happened. Alongside the open collection of texts that scholars could study, another, far more restricted archive began to take shape. By the 16th century, the papacy was not just a religious institution. It was a political power, a monarch among monarchs, navigating wars, treaties, alliances, and betrayals. Every letter from a king, every treaty signed in secret, every trial transcript of a heretic, all were preserved. And these were not meant for the eyes of the public. Thus, the Archivum Secretum Vaticanum was born. The term secretum has misled generations. Today, we hear secret and imagine vaults of forbidden texts, grimoires bound in human skin, or prophecies of the world's end. In truth, the Latin secretum meant separate, private, or personal. The secret archive was not, at first, a sinister place, but simply the Pope's private filing cabinet, an extension of his authority. Yet from the very beginning, the distinction between private and forbidden blurred. After all, when the Pope is not merely a priest but a sovereign ruler, what he calls private might also mean hidden. By the early 1600s, the archive had grown immense. Letters from emperors, dispatches from explorers charting the New World, reports of missionary encounters in distant Asia, Inquisition records of heretics burned at the stake. This was not a mere library. It was the memory of power itself. Popes and their advisors quickly realized that knowledge could be dangerous. A misplaced letter, a revealed alliance, a forgotten prophecy. Any of these could destabilize kingdoms or shake faith. And so the archive grew quietly in shadows. Access was not a right. It was a privilege. and one very few were ever granted. The secrecy itself soon became a source of fascination. The Protestant Reformation, the rise of nation-states, the birth of modern science. All of these developments placed the Catholic Church under pressure. Rumors spread that the Vatican was hoarding texts that contradicted its teachings. Some whispered of hidden gospels, others of pagan scrolls, still others of ancient knowledge lost to the world but preserved in Rome. The more the Church insisted that the archive was private, the more people imagined it was forbidden, and perhaps, in some cases, it was. A turning point came in the 17th century when Pope Paul V formally organized the secret archive as a separate entity, distinct from the Apostolic Library. This decision marked the archive as something more than a private cabinet. It was now an institution unto itself, with its own guardians and rules of access. From that point onward, the aura of secrecy thickened. Theologians spoke cautiously of what might be kept there. Diplomats speculated about incriminating documents that could blackmail entire dynasties. Ordinary believers, hearing only whispers, filled the silence with imagination. But the truth is, secrecy is as powerful as revelation. When knowledge is hidden, people assume it must be extraordinary. And so the Vatican's decision to conceal its documents created an unintended effect. The archive became legendary. It became a magnet for speculation. What could be so dangerous that it had to be locked away? Why did popes throughout history refuse access, even to respected scholars? And most importantly, what would happen if the archive was ever opened? The irony, of course, is that the Vatican never declared its archive forbidden. It simply declared it private. Yet in the human imagination, the two words blurred until they were indistinguishable. Private became forbidden. Hidden became dangerous. Ordinary became mysterious. It would take centuries before the Vatican would even partially open the doors. Not until the late 19th century, under Pope Leo XIII, would scholars finally be granted limited access. But by then, the archive had become a legend in its own right. Think of it this way. When the doors were first locked, the world was still medieval. Kings ruled by divine right. The new world was just being charted. The stars were still considered immutable spheres of heaven. By the time access was granted, the world had transformed. Science had overturned cosmology. Empires had risen and fallen. Entire continents had been conquered. And yet, through it all, the Vatican's archive had slumbered, silent, sealed, waiting. The documents inside had watched the world change. But they themselves had not changed. They remained the same, as dangerous, as mysterious, and as tantalizing as the day they were first locked away. So when we speak of the Vatican's forbidden library, we are really speaking of this long tension between public knowledge and private secrecy. A tension born in the Renaissance, nurtured in the age of empires, and solidified in the shadow of the Reformation. And while historians remind us that secretum simply means private, we cannot escape the weight of centuries of rumor, speculation, and suspicion. For when the most powerful religious institution on earth chooses to lock its doors, we cannot help but wonder, what exactly are they keeping from us? And why? High above the rooftops of Rome, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica gleams in sunlight, a beacon of faith for the millions who journey here each year. Pilgrims gaze upward in awe, craning their necks at Michelangelo's masterpiece, never realizing that directly beneath their feet lies another world, a world of shadows, silence, and secrets. The Vatican's secret archive does not exist in the bustling piazza or the marble halls tourists walk through. It lies deeper, hidden behind guarded doors and buried chambers, beneath the very foundations of Christendom. To step into it is to step into another realm. The scale alone is staggering. The archives are said to stretch more than 53 miles of shelving, an underground labyrinth sprawling beneath Vatican City. Climate-controlled vaults regulate temperature and humidity with machine-like precision. Parchments that would crumble to dust in the outside world here remain preserved for centuries, perhaps forever. Picture narrow aisles lined with cabinets of iron and wood, some polished by centuries of touch, others sealed with locks untouched since the Renaissance. Leather-bound tomes, scrolls wrapped in protective cloth, bundles of papal decrees stacked in neat, cryptic bundles, labeled in Latin. The silence is absolute. Only the low hum of air systems and the faint click of archivists' shoes disturb the stillness. Time itself feels suspended here, every step echoing against marble and stone. Most visitors will never see this. Even scholars permitted access are allowed only into designated reading rooms, guided by archivists who fetch requested documents. The archive itself is not a library where one browses shelves. It is a vault where you ask, and the gatekeepers decide what you may receive. Entire corridors remain locked, their contents known only to a select few. There are rumors of hidden rooms, deeper still, chambers behind sealed doors where the most sensitive manuscripts are kept. Some speak of staircases leading to subterranean vaults far beneath the city, cut off from every map. Others claim there are safes within safes, layers of security designed to protect a single fragile text. And no one outside the Vatican knows how deep these passages go. It is here, beneath the shadow of St. Peter's, that the contradictions of the archive become clear. Above, in the basilica, pilgrims kneel in open devotion, light flooding through stained glass windows, incense curling heavenward. Below, in the archive, light is dim, controlled, artificial. Faith gives way to silence. Worship becomes secrecy. The juxtaposition is startling. One realm of God's house built on revelation, another on concealment. Those who have been permitted to glimpse the interior describe the experience as haunting. The scholar Barbara Frail, one of the rare historians allowed limited access, spoke of the strangeness of handling letters from figures like Michelangelo or Henry VIII, documents that had been locked away for centuries. The sensation was not unlike time travel, she said, touching the living voice of the past. But others have hinted at something darker. A few priests and officials, speaking only off-record, described rooms never spoken of, doors with locks so old their keys are said to have been melted into secrecy. There are whispered accounts of manuscripts that cannot be requested, because to request them is to admit you know they exist. It is as though the archive is divided into layers, one for scholars, one for archivists, and perhaps another, deeper still, for eyes that may never be known. The physical presence of the archive seems to enforce this aura. Walking its aisles is not like exploring a library. It feels more like traversing a crypt. Each locked cabinet resembles a coffin of knowledge, each sealed shelf a tomb of memory. You can almost hear the weight of centuries pressing down. The knowledge of empires lost, the cries of heretics silenced, the secrets of kings and popes. And if you linger too long in those silent corridors, you might begin to wonder, what if the archive itself is alive? Not in the literal sense, but as a presence, a force that shapes what is remembered and what is forgotten. A place where knowledge is not just preserved, but guarded. It is also worth remembering that beneath St. Peter's Basilica lies another secret. The Vatican necropolis, the ancient Roman graveyard where tradition holds the tomb of St. Peter himself. Some theorists suggest that the archive and the necropolis may be connected, that tunnels weave beneath the basilica, linking the tombs of apostles with vaults of forbidden knowledge. Whether truth or rumor, the symbolism is profound. The saint above, buried in the earth. The manuscripts below, buried in silence. Both hidden from the ordinary believer. Both locked away, accessible only to the chosen few. Why build such secrecy into the very heart of Christianity? The Church would say it is not secrecy, but protection. These are fragile documents, after all, easily damaged, easily misinterpreted. The responsibility of the Vatican is to preserve, not to expose. To guard history from decay, and perhaps to guard humanity from dangerous misreadings of that history. Yet the longer you walk through these imagined corridors, the harder it is to shake the feeling that some manuscripts are not simply fragile. Some knowledge, perhaps, is too powerful, too destabilizing. too dangerous to allow into the open air. And so the shadow of St. Peter falls across the archive. Above, sunlight and devotion. Below, darkness and secrecy. Two sides of the same coin. For nearly 400 years, the Vatican has kept its forbidden library in these vaults. Not destroyed, not lost, but preserved with meticulous care, as though waiting for a day when humanity might be ready to know. Or perhaps a day when the Church itself is ready to reveal. Until then, the archive slumbers beneath the basilica, silent and sealed, its secrets guarded in the heart of the Holy See. For all the speculation surrounding the Vatican's forbidden library, it is worth remembering that much of its vast archive is not shrouded in rumor or secrecy. There are treasures we know exist, documents scholars have studied, transcripts that have shaped our understanding of history, letters that still carry the weight of power across the centuries. And yet, even these sanctioned manuscripts reveal a strange truth. Sometimes the official records are every bit as astonishing as the legends of the forbidden. One of the most famous examples rests quietly in these shelves, the petition of King Henry VIII of England, begging Pope Clement VII to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The script is bold, signed by dozens of English nobles. Henry's desperate words still echo across time, for from this request, denied by the Pope, erupted the chain of events that tore England away from Rome and birthed the Church of England. To hold that document in one's hands is to touch the very spark of the Reformation. It is remarkable to think that a single parchment, carefully preserved in Rome, set in motion the reshaping of the entire Western world. Nearby rests another manuscript, no less weighty in consequence. The trial records of Galileo Galilei, the great astronomer who dared to declare that Earth revolved around the sun. Here, in precise handwriting, are the minutes of the Inquisition, the charges of heresy, the Pope's deliberations, Galileo's forced recantation. What makes these records unsettling is not only their content, but their tone, dry, clinical, bureaucratic, as though condemning one of the greatest minds of all time was no more than a matter of filing paperwork. And yet, within those pages is preserved a defining moment in human history, the collision of faith and science, reason and dogma. The collection holds the letters of Michelangelo, negotiating payment for his work on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Simple financial documents, one might think. Yet between the lines, we glimpse the burdens of genius, the struggles of art and authority, the timeless reminder that even the greatest masterpieces of human civilization were born out of debt, compromise, and human frailty. There are also letters from monarchs and explorers, from the rulers of France and Spain, from Jesuit missionaries reporting back from distant continents. Their words paint a mosaic of empires rising and falling, often couched in tones of piety, but always threaded with ambition. One particularly chilling set of documents concerns the Inquisition. Trial transcripts, confessions, and decrees against those deemed heretics. Many of these confessions were written under torture, the ink still bearing the tremor of hands forced to sign away their beliefs. The sheer volume of these records is staggering. Scholars estimate millions of pages exist, covering centuries of religious persecution across Europe and beyond. They are the official memory of one of the darkest chapters in church history, preserved not to celebrate, but perhaps to ensure that the institution itself never forgets what it once sanctioned. There are also treasures of diplomacy. In one cabinet lies a letter written by Abraham Lincoln to Pope Pius IX during the American Civil War. In another, the correspondence of emperors and czars, treaties signed in secret, agreements that shaped borders and destinies. These are not dusty relics. They are the fingerprints of power, inked on a parchment, binding rulers and nations. Each document is a reminder that the Vatican was not only a religious institution, but a geopolitical force woven into the very fabric of world history. What makes these known treasures so compelling is not only their survival, but their proximity to what is hidden. For if such extraordinary records are openly acknowledged, annulments that changed kingdoms, trials that silenced science, confessions that ended in flames, then what, one wonders, lies just beyond reach? If these are the treasures the Vatican is willing to share, what must the forbidden ones contain? The design of access itself deepens the mystery. Scholars who gain permission must submit precise requests: the name of the document, the date, the archive reference. There is no browsing, no casual exploration. One must already know what to ask for. And so, the treasures we know are like islands rising from a sea of obscurity. The rest remain submerged, unrequested, unseen. This raises a tantalizing possibility. How many texts are there that no one alive even remembers to ask for? Manuscripts that exist but are effectively erased because their names are forgotten, their references unspoken. It is in this silence between the known and the unknown that the imagination begins to wander. Consider this. The Henry VIII petition was locked away for centuries before being rediscovered. Galileo's transcripts, too, lay dormant until scholars pieced them together. Even these open treasures were once concealed in the archive's depths, invisible until someone thought to ask. If such world-changing documents could sleep for centuries, how many more still slumber, waiting? How many petitions were ignored? How many confessions never recorded? How many gospels never recognized? The treasures of the known collection remind us of a crucial truth. Secrecy does not always mean absence. Sometimes it simply means delay. What is locked away today may be revealed tomorrow, and what seems mundane on the surface may, with time, prove explosive. For history is not a fixed story. It is a living archive, waiting for its next discovery. And so we are left with this paradox. Even the manuscripts we know exist in the Vatican's library are strange enough, powerful enough, and unsettling enough to justify centuries of fascination. If annulments can spark reformations, if trials can silence science, if treaties can shift empires, then perhaps the forbidden library is not so far from the known one after all. Perhaps the line between the open and the hidden is thinner than we imagine. In the next section, we will cross that line, leaving behind the official and the sanctioned, and entering the realm of whispers. Here lie the rumors of texts never shown, manuscripts said to be too dangerous for human eyes, the forbidden gospels, the grimoires of necromancy, and the scrolls of pagan gods. Every great archive holds its share of mysteries. But with the Vatican's library, the whispers begin to take on a life of their own. For centuries, behind the polished explanations of private papers and administrative records, stories have circulated of documents far stranger, far darker, than any annulment request or trial transcript. They're the texts that cannot be spoken of in official catalogs. The manuscripts rumored to exist, but never shown. The writings said to be locked not just behind doors, but behind deliberate silence. And though the Vatican denies them, the whispers refuse to die. The first rumors date back to the Middle Ages, when heretical sects claimed that Rome possessed secret gospels hidden from the faithful. They believed the Church had carefully chosen which stories of Christ to canonize and which to bury. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Judas, the so-called Sayings Gospel Q, said to be a collection of Jesus' original teachings. Most of these apocryphal texts surfaced centuries later in desert caves or chance discoveries, such as the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt. Yet conspiracy persists that others still lie in Vatican vaults, manuscripts that would overturn the foundations of Christian doctrine if revealed. Could there be a gospel that tells a radically different story of Christ's life? Could there be accounts of miracles never told, or secrets never meant for ordinary eyes? The Church, of course, insists no such texts are hidden, but the whispers continue. Others claim that the Vatican holds scrolls even older than Christianity, texts of pagan origin, gathered in the centuries when Rome absorbed the religions of conquered lands. Egyptian writings, Hermetic treatises, fragments of the Orphic hymns, wisdom from civilizations long past. The fate of the Library of Alexandria adds fuel to this fire. When the great library burned, thousands of scrolls vanished from history. Yet some believe certain works were smuggled to Rome before the flames, preserved in secrecy ever since. If true, the Vatican vaults may hold the last surviving fragments of humanity's earliest philosophies, sciences, and mysteries. What might be hidden there? Astronomical calculations lost for millennia? Rituals of forgotten gods? Even blueprints of technologies our modern world has yet to rediscover? And then there are the darker whispers still of grimoires and forbidden manuals of sorcery. The Middle Ages were rife with tales of necromancy and demonology, books of spells that promised to conjure angels or bind devils. The infamous Ars Goetia, the so-called Book of Solomon, and other works of occult magic circulated at the edges of society, often destroyed when discovered. Yet many believe the Church never truly destroyed them. Instead, it confiscated and locked them away. For if demons exist, and if men had written their names in rituals, then who more than the Vatican would wish to possess such knowledge? Not to use it, but to understand it, to classify it, to contain it. What does it mean if manuscripts of sorcery lie sealed beneath the heart of Christianity? Does it mean the Church secretly validated them as real, or simply feared what they might unleash if allowed into the world? Accounts from a few who claim to have seen fragments are always tantalizingly vague. A French historian in the 17th century spoke of books of black arts confiscated by inquisitors and hidden in the papal chambers. An Italian monk in the 19th century hinted at manuscripts written in the language of demons. Even in the 20th century, researchers occasionally mutter about references to volumes no scholar has ever been permitted to study. Separating fact from fantasy is nearly impossible. But the pattern is clear. Again and again, voices across the centuries point to a darker collection within the archive, a shadow library, hidden behind the official one. And what a prophecy! Some whisper of apocalyptic manuscripts locked away to prevent panic. Texts predicting wars, plagues, and the downfall of nations. The Sibylline books, legendary oracles of Rome, may have found their way here. Others believe there are lost prophecies of early saints, visions too terrifying to reveal. The story of the third secret of Fatima has only deepened these suspicions. When the Vatican released its official account of the vision, depicting a bishop dressed in white, shot down by soldiers, many believers felt the explanation was incomplete. Some clergy even suggested a darker portion of the prophecy remain suppressed, describing nothing less than the end of the world. If that is true, might there be other prophecies too dire, too destabilizing, locked away in silence? Of course, the Vatican denies these whispers. Officials insist the archive is not a vault of sorcery, not a chamber of apocalyptic warnings, not a treasure chest of heretical gospels. They remind us that secrecy in Latin simply means privacy. But secrecy has a strange power. When access is limited, when doors remain locked, imagination fills the void. The forbidden library becomes a mirror of our deepest fears and our deepest desires for hidden truth. Perhaps that is the real question. Do these manuscripts truly exist? Or are they shadows projected by our longing for mystery, by our suspicion of power, by our hunger to believe that somewhere, someone knows more than we do? And yet, we cannot dismiss the whispers so easily. For again and again, history has proven that what was once considered legend sometimes emerges as fact. The Dead Sea Scrolls, once only rumored, were unearthed. The Gospel of Judas, thought lost, resurfaced. What if the next great revelation waits, not in a desert cave, but in a vault beneath Rome? The whispers of the forbidden manuscripts do not end here. They ripple outward into the realms of lost gospels, pagan wisdom, and occult knowledge. Each rumor a thread in a larger tapestry, suggesting that beneath the Vatican's official history lies another, darker chronicle. And the more we listen, the more we wonder, are these whispers fantasy? Or are they the faint echoes of truths deliberately buried? In the next section, we will focus on one of the most enduring of these whispers, the lost Gospels and early Christian heresies. Could the Vatican be hiding accounts of Christ that differ from the Bible we know today? Long before the Vatican's archive became a labyrinth of locked doors and climate-controlled vaults, Christianity itself was a religion in flux. The Gospels that now form the New Testament were not written as a single, unified canon. They emerged over decades, authored by different communities, in different languages, each interpreting the life and teachings of Jesus in distinct ways. Some told stories of his miracles and parables. Others explored philosophical ideas that diverged sharply from what would become orthodoxy. And some were suppressed. These suppressed texts, often called the Lost Gospels, have long fascinated scholars and conspiracy theorists alike. The Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, emphasizes mystical knowledge over moral commandments. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene presents her not as a sinner, as later tradition suggested, but as a central disciple, even a visionary guide. The Gospel of Judas reframes the betrayal of Jesus as a necessary, almost sacred act. Such writings were deemed heretical by church authorities, and according to legend, many of them were quietly removed from circulation, destroyed, or hidden, some, it is said, transported to the Vatican's secret archives. The very idea that these texts may still exist behind locked doors fuels centuries of speculation. What if the Church possesses manuscripts that tell a radically different story of Jesus? Not a divine figure detached from humanity, but one whose teachings were misunderstood, even deliberately altered? The suppression of early Christian heresies was not only theological, but also political. Movements like Gnosticism, which emphasized secret knowledge as the path to salvation, threatened the consolidation of church authority. Gnostic texts describe a cosmos ruled by multiple divine beings, a far more complex spiritual hierarchy than the simple heaven and hell dichotomy later codified. The Church labeled these writings dangerous, calling their adherents heretics. Many texts were burned. Others disappeared into the shadows. Some, rumor suggests, to the Vatican, the ultimate repository for dangerous knowledge. The allure of these hidden Gospels lies not only in their content, but in their implications. If the Vatican preserves them, it could mean that the Church has long known the diversity of early Christian thought, yet chose to canonize only a single narrative. What other perspectives might these lost manuscripts offer? Could they reveal teachings that radically shift the understanding of faith, salvation, or the nature of Jesus himself? Could they hint at knowledge deemed too dangerous for public consumption? Knowledge that, if released, might challenge the Church's very foundations? Archaeological discoveries lend weight to these speculations. In 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library was discovered in Upper Egypt, a cache of Gnostic texts hidden for centuries. Among these were writings that scholars now recognize as complementary to, or sometimes contradicting, canonical scripture. The very fact that such texts survived in secrecy underscores the possibility that more remain hidden, and perhaps some are kept under the Vatican's careful guard. One cannot ignore the symbolism. The Church, which canonized some texts and condemned others, may have preserved the forbidden manuscripts in its vaults not to destroy them, but to control them. But what about the so-called lost apocryphal Gospels, the ones never surfaced, never referenced, known only through rumor? Scholars and ex-priests whisper about texts that describe Jesus' childhood in great detail, recount secret teachings delivered to select disciples, or reveal aspects of his life erased from history. Some of these writings, they say, are far darker than the Gospels we know today. They hint at knowledge that could destabilize belief itself. The very fact that they remain undiscovered or undisclosed only amplifies their mystique. It is important to note that these claims are often impossible to verify. Yet, the pattern is compelling. Early Christianity was never monolithic. It was a movement of debate, interpretation, and controversy. If the Vatican archives were designed to safeguard knowledge, it is entirely plausible that texts from these early debates were preserved, not destroyed, to prevent misinterpretation or perhaps to retain control over religious history. The lost Gospels are not the only evidence of suppressed knowledge. Heretical treatises, letters from excommunicated theologians, and writings condemned by early church councils all hint at a more complex story. Take, for example, the letter of Mara Barsarapian, which references Jesus as a wise king whose teachings were misunderstood and whose death was politically motivated. Or the Gospel of the Hebrews, referenced by early church fathers but now lost, said to offer details of Christ's resurrection that diverge from canonical accounts. Each of these texts raises a tantalizing question. What else might be hidden beneath Rome, safely locked away in manuscripts that have never seen the light of day? The allure of early heresies is amplified by the human fascination with what is forbidden. There is a natural tension between revelation and suppression. When knowledge is suppressed, imagination fills the gaps. Readers and researchers speculate. Were Mary Magdalene's teachings erased because of gender bias? Were secret philosophical insights buried because they contradicted emerging church doctrine? Were some manuscripts hidden simply because their truth was considered too dangerous? It is within this tension that the Vatican's secret archive becomes a stage for the imagination, a repository not merely of history, but of possibility. And yet, some scholars insist on caution. They warn that many of these claims are fueled by wishful thinking, by conspiracy, or by the human desire for a hidden narrative beneath the surface of history. Some manuscripts may never have existed. Some may be irretrievably lost. But the possibility that they do exist, locked, cataloged, and preserved beneath St. Peter's Basilica, is what keeps curiosity alive. The lost Gospels are not just historical documents. They are symbols of a deeper tension, the tension between the Church as guardian and the Church as gatekeeper. To imagine them is to imagine a different history of Christianity, one in which multiple voices, multiple interpretations, and multiple truths existed, and some of them survived quietly in the shadows. And perhaps, one day, those shadows will reveal themselves. Long before Christianity took root in Rome, the Mediterranean world was alive with knowledge, ritual, and belief. Temples dedicated to Jupiter, Isis, and Osiris held vast libraries of scrolls. Priests and scribes recorded not only sacred rites, but also philosophy, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy. Civilization itself was encoded in ink and papyrus. When Christianity became the dominant faith, these temples were abandoned, their treasures plundered, their knowledge considered dangerous or heretical. But legend suggests that not all of it was destroyed. Some scholars whisper that fragments of this ancient wisdom were quietly transported to Rome, absorbed into the Church's growing collection, and ultimately preserved in what would become the Vatican's secret archives. The idea is both compelling and unsettling. Ancient Egyptian texts, the Hermetic corpus, Orphic hymns, even Babylonian astronomical records, all may lie beneath St. Peter's Basilica, cataloged, indexed, and hidden. The Hermetic texts, in particular, are said to contain profound insights, teachings on the cosmos, on the connection between man and the divine, on alchemy, and on the mysteries of the mind. For centuries, these scrolls were considered dangerous because they promised knowledge outside the Church's sanctioned doctrine. They offered power to understand, and perhaps manipulate, the universe itself. Could the Vatican, the very seat of Christian orthodoxy, be the final guardian of this ancient, forbidden wisdom? Some historians point to Pope Leo XIII, a figure fascinated by the occult and classical learning, as evidence that the Church at least valued these texts for study. Others cite Athanasius Kircher, the 17th-century Jesuit polymath, who devoted his life to deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs and alchemical writings. Kircher's work suggests that the Church was not merely a destroyer of pagan knowledge. In some cases, it became its protector, preserving texts too profound, too powerful, or too dangerous to leave in the open. The possibility is extraordinary. Imagine scrolls describing the secrets of the stars, encoded rituals of forgotten deities, medical treatises more advanced than anything known in the Middle Ages. Some claim that certain Egyptian texts, the so-called Book of Thoth, may have survived, preserved quietly in the vaults. These writings were said to grant wisdom, perhaps even power, to those capable of interpreting them. It is easy to see why such manuscripts would be hidden. Knowledge is power. Knowledge unrestrained can undermine institutions. And if even a fraction of this ancient wisdom were accessible, it might reshape the world. Rome itself is filled with evidence that the Church both revered and feared this knowledge. Many early Christian cathedrals were constructed atop pagan temples. In some cases, statues of pagan gods were repurposed, inscriptions reinterpreted. Could it be that in addition to the symbolic, the Vatican absorbed the literal, manuscripts, scrolls, and codices, and stored them away for safekeeping? Archaeologists have noted fragments of texts brought to Rome from Alexandria, once a hub of learning, thought destroyed in the fires of conquest. Some scrolls, never cataloged in public records, may have been spirited to the Vatican centuries ago. These fragments, if real, could contain science, astrology, rituals, or philosophy lost to history. Some scholars argue that the Church's interest in pagan texts was pragmatic. Knowledge could be repurposed to strengthen theology, to understand and counter heretical practices, or to study medicine, astronomy, and mathematics. But others insist that there is a darker layer, that certain scrolls were deliberately hidden because they revealed truths incompatible with the Christian narrative. And so, a duality emerges: preservation versus suppression. The Church as archivist. The Church as gatekeeper. Rumors persist of specific manuscripts that may never have seen the light of day. Scrolls detailing Egyptian rituals invoking the dead, Babylonian star charts predicting celestial events centuries in advance, Orphic hymns describing the soul's journey through multiple lives. The claims grow more sensational over time, feeding the legend of a Vatican archive that is not just a library, but a repository of forbidden knowledge. Some even suggest that these texts could include technologies or philosophical insights lost to history, blueprints for machines, formulas for compounds, methods of divination or healing that modern science has forgotten. The Vatican, naturally, denies such claims. It insists the archive preserves only religious and administrative documents, nothing more. But the physical reality supports speculation. The Vatican is home to tens of thousands of manuscripts from every corner of the known world, collected over centuries. Many are sealed, uncatalogued, or known only to a handful of archivists. It is not unreasonable, therefore, to imagine that among these preserved works are pagan texts, relics of civilizations extinguished in war or conquest, surviving only in the careful hands of the Church. The significance is staggering. These scrolls, if authentic, would not merely illuminate ancient religions. They could rewrite our understanding of science, philosophy, and history itself. Consider, what might we learn from a complete hermetic treatise on the stars, or a Babylonian record predicting eclipses centuries in advance, or an Egyptian text describing medicinal herbs unknown to modern pharmacology? All of this knowledge, locked away beneath St. Peter's, is tantalizing precisely because it is inaccessible. And there's a symbolic weight to it, too. The Church, inheritor of Rome's empire, sits atop these texts. Christianity, which once destroyed pagan temples, may have paradoxically preserved some of their most profound secrets. The very faith that forbade certain knowledge may also have become its ultimate guardian. In this light, the Vatican's archive is more than a library. It is a bridge connecting ancient civilizations, lost wisdom, and the modern world. And yet, it is a bridge we may never cross. The whispers continue. Scholars and historians talk of scrolls labeled in cryptic Latin, codices whose origins defy verification, manuscripts so fragile that only the Pope and a handful of archivists may touch them. Some say certain rooms are sealed with no intention of ever being opened, a measure of protection, or perhaps of fear. We cannot know the truth, but the very act of imagining it, of envisioning scrolls of pagan wisdom resting beneath the Vatican, is enough to ignite curiosity, awe, and unease. As we move forward in our exploration, we We'll encounter manuscripts that are not only ancient, but dangerous in concept, texts of necromancy, demonology, and occult rites. The knowledge preserved here is no longer philosophical or historical alone. It becomes esoteric, even forbidden. Beneath the shadow of St. Peter, the line between history, religion, and the arcane begins to blur. Beneath the serene marble floors of St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican's secret archives are said to hold manuscripts that defy ordinary comprehension, texts that speak not of kings, popes, or heretics, but of the supernatural, of powers humans were never meant to wield, of forces that, according to legend, could summon, bind, or banish entities from beyond the mortal plane. These are the grimoires, the books of demonology and texts of the so-called dark arts, writings that in the popular imagination have earned the label forbidden for good reason. The Catholic Church has long had a complicated relationship with these practices. On one hand, exorcisms and the study of evil were sanctioned. After all, demons were considered real, and priests were trained to confront them. On the other hand, the mere possession of occult knowledge was dangerous. A grimoire was not just a book, it was a key, and keys could open doors that many feared to unlock. Medieval Europe was rife with rumors. Priests and inquisitors spoke of texts bound in human skin, written in secret languages, containing rituals that allowed mortals to command spirits or foresee apocalyptic events. Some claimed that manuscripts confiscated from heretics or witches were brought directly to Rome, preserved under strict lock and key. Imagine, for a moment, the thrill and fear of an archivist holding such a book. The parchment brittle with age, the ink dark and enigmatic, symbols and sigils dancing across the page, instructions to summon an entity, to call forth a spirit from another realm, to bend unseen forces to one's will. There is evidence that the Church did not simply destroy these books. Scholars like Athanasius Kircher, the 17th century Jesuit polymath, reportedly studied texts on magic and the occult, cataloging their contents. The Vatican even employed experts to transcribe and preserve forbidden knowledge, not to practice it, but to understand it. Knowledge, the Church believed, must be controlled. If these grimoires were ever allowed to circulate freely, chaos might follow. Entire communities could be corrupted by the lure of forbidden power. Some of the most chilling rumors concern manuscripts said to describe necromancy, the act of raising the dead, communicating with spirits, or binding souls. These texts were treated with extreme caution. Priests whispered that even reading certain passages aloud could be dangerous. That knowledge itself could act as a conduit to forces beyond human comprehension. Yet the Vatican preserved them, locked away, cataloged, guarded. Why? Perhaps because in the hands of the wrong person, such knowledge could be devastating. Perhaps because it is impossible to destroy wisdom entirely once it has been recorded. Or perhaps, some suggest, the Church wished to maintain a monopoly over what the world might call forbidden power. Beyond necromancy, the archive is said to contain texts on demonology, manuals describing the hierarchy of spirits, their names, their weaknesses, and the rituals to summon or control them. In medieval Europe, knowledge of demons was both feared and practical. Exorcists needed to know the names of entities to cast them out. Scholars documented the same entities in codices that were later locked in Rome. Legends hint that these manuscripts include references to spirits whose names were deliberately erased elsewhere. Rituals too dangerous to perform outside controlled circumstances, and incantations designed to manipulate forces unseen. Perhaps the most infamous example is a supposed manuscript known as the Liber Maleficarum Vaticanum, a book allegedly detailing dark rites, the summoning of infernal entities, and instructions for binding them to human will. While no scholar outside the Vatican has confirmed its existence, its mention appears in passing in historical correspondence between 16th and 17th century theologians. According to rumor, the Church cataloged these texts not to practice their rituals, but to understand the mechanics of evil, to study it, and to prevent misuse. The secrecy surrounding these manuscripts only fuels speculation. Scholars allowed limited access often describe books in locked cabinets labeled in cryptic Latin, fragile scrolls with esoteric symbols, and texts so delicate they may never be fully examined. Some archives reportedly restrict access to the Pope himself. Imagine a corridor lined with manuscripts on demonology, grimoires detailing powers both spiritual and psychological, their pages untouched for centuries. A place where the very air seems heavy with the weight of knowledge humans were warned not to seek. And yet, the archive is not simply a repository of fear. Some researchers argue that these texts reflect the Church's desire to comprehend the full spectrum of human belief, to catalog even the darkest aspects of imagination and ritual. Knowledge of demons, curses, and forbidden rites was never meant for casual use. But for scholars, priests, and archivists, understanding these forces was a form of preparation, a shield against the unknown. In that sense, the Vatican's approach mirrors that of an ancient library, a safeguard, rather than a tool of power. Still, the imagination cannot resist the darker possibility. What if some manuscripts do contain actual knowledge of forces beyond our understanding? What if, somewhere in the archive, there exists a grimoire whose rituals were more than symbolic, whose instructions could summon something not entirely of this world? It is impossible to confirm, and yet, that very uncertainty sustains fascination. The forbidden nature of these texts, combined with centuries of secrecy, turns them into objects of irresistible mystery. Perhaps that is the ultimate power of the dark arts preserved in the Vatican. Not the spells themselves, but the knowledge that such things might exist, carefully cataloged, locked away, and preserved in silence. Some scholars and clerics hint that this knowledge influenced church practices in subtle ways. Exorcisms, theological warnings, moral teachings, all may have been informed by careful study of the forces humans feared most. The Church, it seems, has long walked a line between studying evil and containing it, between fear and understanding. The grimoires, the manuals, the demonological codices, they remind us that the Vatican's archive is not only a repository of history, theology, or diplomacy. It is a vault of human imagination, ambition, and terror. Knowledge that might elevate, enlighten, or destroy. And beneath the marble floors of St. Peter's, the doors remain locked. The manuscripts remain sealed. Their contents are whispered about in history and legend, but largely inaccessible, a reminder that some knowledge is always meant to be hidden, and some mysteries, perhaps, are eternal. If the Vatican's secret archive holds grimoires and demonology texts, it also safeguards another category of documents that has fascinated the faithful and the curious for centuries: prophecies. Manuscripts that claim to predict the future, outline the fates of kingdoms, or reveal secrets of the Church itself. These are not merely historical curiosities. They are writings that, according to legend, could alter how humanity understands its past and foresees its future. One of the most famous examples is the prophecies of Saint Malachy, attributed to a 12th century Irish archbishop. Written in cryptic Latin, these short, enigmatic phrases are said to describe every pope from Celestine II onward, a sequence that many claim predicted the papacy with uncanny accuracy. For centuries, skeptics dismissed these prophecies as vague or forged, yet believers insist that the descriptions of modern popes, particularly the final one, sometimes called Peter the Roman, hint at an apocalypse. While the Vatican has never confirmed the authenticity of St. Malachy's prophecy, the documents themselves reportedly exist in the secret archives. Then there are the Sibylline prophecies, fragments of ancient Roman texts consulted in times of crisis. Some claim that copies or references of these oracles survived in Rome, preserved not in public libraries, but within the Vatican's vaults. These texts often foretold plagues, wars, and political upheavals, guidance intended for rulers, but carefully guarded from the general populace. What is striking is the recurrence of themes: destruction, renewal, moral reckoning. These are not whimsical predictions. They are warnings, sometimes coded, sometimes apocalyptic, that demand interpretation, caution, and secrecy. The Catholic Church has historically taken prophecy seriously, but cautiously. Popes and theologians studied oracular writings to understand divine will, yet they often suppress public access to texts deemed too dangerous or destabilizing. Some manuscripts were deliberately removed from circulation to prevent panic or to preserve institutional authority. Thus, the Vatican Archive became a repository of foresight, a silent witness to what humanity might become, and a reminder of how fragile civilization can be when confronted with the unknown. Among the more mysterious apocalyptic manuscripts are those attributed to mystics and saints, writings that describe visions of heaven and hell, the end of the world, or secret instructions given to individuals with divine insight. Some texts reportedly describe wars and revolutions centuries before they occurred. Others outline plagues and natural disasters with startling specificity. The accuracy of such accounts is debated. Yet the possibility that some of these writings are authentic, hidden, and preserved in secret feeds centuries of fascination and fear. The Third Secret of Fatima offers a particularly compelling case. In 1917, 3 children in Portugal reported visions of the Virgin Mary, including 3 prophetic secrets. While the first 2 were revealed in the 20th century, the third remained sealed in the Vatican for decades. Its eventual disclosure was cryptic, a vision of a bishop being martyred. Believers argue that the official release may have been incomplete. Some suggest that apocalyptic details were withheld, hinting at the Church's continued management of dangerous knowledge. Could the secret archive contain similar apocalyptic manuscripts, texts that are too destabilizing for public release? Historical correspondence reinforces this idea. Letters between popes, cardinals, and scholars reference manuscripts too terrible to publish or prophecies to be locked away until the end times. While these letters are often ambiguous, they suggest a conscious effort to protect both the faithful and the institution from the disruptive potential of prophecy. This duality of preservation and suppression is a recurring theme in the archive. The Church safeguards knowledge that might otherwise be misused, yet in doing so, it intensifies the allure of the unknown. Consider the psychological effect of this secrecy. When a text is locked away, its existence alone becomes a source of tension. If it predicts the fall of empires, the death of the Church, or the end of the world, the imagination fills in the gaps. Legends flourish. Scholars, mystics, and conspiracy theorists all wonder, if the prophecies are true, what is being withheld? And if the prophecies are false? The secrecy itself becomes a tool, a form of control over belief and fear. Some manuscripts reportedly combine prophecy with occult knowledge, grimoires that contain predictions linked to rituals or celestial events. These are particularly intriguing to scholars of esoteric history. Could the Vatican possess texts that merge science, astrology, and divination? Documents that chart not only historical events, but human destiny? The implications are staggering. If such manuscripts exist, they could redefine the boundaries of history, theology, and human understanding. The archive, in this sense, is more than a library. It is a time capsule of human ambition, fear, and foresight. Yet the Church remains firm in its denials. Access to prophetic manuscripts is limited. Researchers are permitted to study only certain documents under strict supervision. Many of the most intriguing prophecies, it seems, remain inaccessible to all but a handful of Vatican officials. This exclusivity reinforces the mythos of the Forbidden Archive. Every restriction fuels curiosity. Every locked cabinet becomes a symbol of mystery. Every whispered reference adds weight to centuries of speculation. The allure of prophecy lies not only in the content of the manuscripts, but in their potential impact. Knowledge of the future, if true, could inspire hope, dread, or upheaval. If contained, it becomes a secret power, a force the Vatican alone is said to hold. This tension between revelation and concealment, between warning and authority, is a defining feature of the secret archive. And it is precisely this tension that has captured the imagination of historians, scholars, and conspiracy theorists alike. In essence, the apocalyptic manuscripts of the Vatican represent the ultimate intersection of faith, fear, and knowledge. They are not merely relics of the past. They are documents that speak to the future, a future observed, cataloged, and sealed beneath St. Peter's Basilica. And while we may never read them, the possibility of their existence continues to shape our understanding of history, belief, and the limits of human knowledge. In the next section, we will explore modern implications, how these hidden manuscripts continue to influence the church, scholarship, and global culture today, and what the quest to uncover them reveals about our own desire for forbidden knowledge. Even as the Vatican's secret archives continue to guard their treasures beneath St. Peter's Basilica, the modern world has not stopped asking questions. Centuries-old manuscripts, grimoires, and apocalyptic prophecies have become objects of fascination for scholars, journalists, and conspiracy theorists alike. In an age of transparency and information, the secrecy of the Vatican only deepens the allure. Researchers are drawn by curiosity, ambition, and the possibility of uncovering truths long concealed. But access remains tightly controlled, reinforcing the perception that some knowledge is simply too powerful for ordinary eyes. Scholars granted permission to study the archives describe a process both meticulous and surreal. Requests must be submitted months, sometimes years in advance. Each document is logged, retrieved by archivists, and presented in controlled conditions. Many are so fragile that handling is limited to brief sessions. Digital reproduction is often prohibited. It is not an exaggeration to say that these manuscripts exist almost in a parallel reality, preserved, cataloged, and studied, yet largely invisible to the public. Yet even limited access has yielded remarkable insights. Historians have traced the evolution of early Christianity through heretical letters and lost gospels. Anthropologists study ancient pagan texts to understand cultural integration and adaptation. Scholars of occult history analyze grimoires and demonological manuscripts to understand how religious institutions engaged with forbidden knowledge. Each discovery adds layers to our understanding of history, but also raises new questions. Why preserve some texts but hide others? What criteria determine which manuscripts are accessible and which are sealed for eternity? In some cases, scholars have been astonished by the depth of what remains unknown. Consider Barbara Frail, a Vatican archivist who unearthed secret documents related to the Knights Templar. Her research revealed correspondences and trial records previously believed lost, documents that reshaped centuries of understanding about this mysterious order. Frail's work demonstrates a crucial point. Even in the modern era, where information flows freely across the globe, the Vatican archives remain a space of profound secrecy, where discoveries continue to surprise, challenge, and intrigue. Journalists, too, have contributed to the mythology. Investigative reports, sometimes sensationalized, hint at forbidden manuscripts, occult texts, and apocalyptic prophecies. While many claims cannot be verified, they underscore a truth about human curiosity. Secrecy fuels imagination. The tighter the vault, the greater the speculation, and the more enduring the allure. This dynamic is evident in popular culture as well. Films, novels, and documentaries often reference lost gospels, hidden grimoires, and prophetic manuscripts, drawing inspiration from the whispers surrounding the Vatican archives. Even if fictionalized, these stories are rooted in historical realities, real manuscripts, real restrictions, real mysteries. The modern pursuit is not merely about uncovering secrets. It is also about understanding how knowledge is controlled, preserved, and interpreted. Scholars emphasize that the archive is more than a collection of documents. It is a testament to the Church's long-standing role as both guardian and gatekeeper of history. In some sense, the Vatican archive serves as a mirror, reflecting not only the past, but also our contemporary fascination with secrecy, power, and forbidden knowledge. Contemporary researchers also grapple with ethical questions. If lost gospels or ancient grimoires are discovered, should they be revealed to the public? Or is there a legitimate reason to maintain secrecy, to protect fragile manuscripts, prevent misinterpretation, or shield society from potentially destabilizing knowledge? Some scholars argue that secrecy is necessary. Others insist that knowledge belongs to humanity. The tension between these positions fuels ongoing debates about transparency, history, and authority. Interestingly, modern technology has both helped and complicated matters. Digitization projects aim to preserve texts for future generations, yet access remains selective. Advanced imaging techniques reveal hidden writings, palimpsests, and previously unreadable notes. Even in the 21st century, the Vatican remains a place where discovery is painstaking, deliberate, and controlled. A reminder that history, no matter how old, is never truly static. The pursuit of forbidden manuscripts also touches on broader philosophical questions. What drives humans to seek hidden knowledge? Is it curiosity, ambition, or desire for power? And what does it mean when the knowledge sought is intentionally concealed by an institution whose authority spans centuries? These questions extend beyond the Vatican itself. They reflect universal human concerns, the tension between revelation and secrecy, the ethical use of knowledge, and the eternal allure of the forbidden. In practical terms, scholars continue to uncover treasures. Letters, papal decrees, trial records, and early manuscripts are systematically studied, cataloged, and sometimes published in sanitized form. Yet the most tantalizing documents, grimoires, lost gospels, apocalyptic prophecies, remain largely inaccessible. This limited access ensures that the archive continues to hold a central place in modern imagination. Every new scholarly discovery is a reminder of how much remains hidden, how much knowledge may lie beneath layers of secrecy, waiting for the right person at the right time to reveal it. In this way, the Vatican archives serve as both history and legend. They are a real-world repository of documents that shaped empires, religions, and societies, and simultaneously a mythic space where human curiosity meets the unknown. They invite us to question what we know, what we believe, and what is deliberately withheld. And they challenge us to consider the implications of secrecy in a world obsessed with transparency. Ultimately, the modern pursuit of these manuscripts reveals something profound: the intersection of history, mystery, and human ambition. Scholars chase facts, mystics chase meanings, conspiracy theorists chase shadows. And in every case, the Vatican archive looms as both the prize and the enigma, a place where knowledge, power, and secrecy converge in silence. The pursuit continues. Every researcher who walks the corridors of the archive, every historian granted a glimpse, becomes part of a continuum stretching back centuries, part of a story that is as much about the seekers as it is about the secrets they pursue. In the next section, we will explore the most dramatic claims surrounding the Vatican's hidden manuscripts, legends that hint at forbidden rituals, suppressed technologies, and knowledge said to challenge the foundations of human civilization. As we delve deeper into the Vatican's forbidden archives, the whispers take on an even more extraordinary dimension. The notion that hidden manuscripts may contain knowledge not merely theological, philosophical, or mystical, but technological. For centuries, some researchers, historians, and conspiracy theorists have suggested that the Church preserved documents detailing inventions, engineering designs, or techniques lost to history. Knowledge that, if widely disseminated, could alter the trajectory of human civilization. The claims are extraordinary. Some hint at manuscripts describing flying machines inspired by Leonardo da Vinci, blueprints for mechanisms far ahead of their time, or even formulas for advanced metallurgy, explosives, or chemical compounds unknown to modern science. Others suggest more esoteric technologies, devices capable of manipulating energy, light, or even consciousness. While mainstream historians are skeptical, the sheer scope of the Vatican archive lends credibility to the possibility. Over centuries, the Church has acquired manuscripts from every corner of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Libraries looted, copied, or purchased during conquests and missions. Some of these texts predate the printing press. Some contain diagrams, notes, or sketches that have never been publicly examined. Consider Leonardo da Vinci himself. While many of his inventions were published or widely circulated after his death, it is known that the Vatican acquired some of his personal papers. Scholars speculate that documents detailing his most ambitious ideas, from aerial devices to hydraulic engineering, may lie hidden in the archives, waiting for careful study. Beyond da Vinci, other medieval and Renaissance engineers recorded ideas that were centuries ahead of their time. The Church, in acquiring and preserving these manuscripts, may have inadvertently become the steward of technologies that would not be understood until modern science caught up. The implications are staggering. Imagine manuscripts describing advanced flight centuries before the Wright brothers, or engineering techniques for bridges, tunnels, or even weapons systems lost to the fall of empires. Knowledge that, if released prematurely, could have shifted global power, altered the outcomes of wars, or accelerated the development of civilization. Some researchers suggest that the Church's careful curation of these manuscripts was intentional, not to suppress progress maliciously, but to ensure that dangerous knowledge did not fall into the wrong hands. Then there are claims of manuscripts detailing alchemy and transmutation, pursuits that blur the line between science and mysticism. While the transformation of base metals into gold has long been dismissed as fantasy, alchemical texts often contain sophisticated chemical observations, medicinal formulas, and proto-scientific experimentation. It is conceivable that some of these texts, preserved in the Vatican, represent knowledge that was never lost, only hidden, cataloged, and studied in secret. The Church may have safeguarded discoveries that, if misused, could destabilize economies, societies, or even entire nations. Some scholars argue that the Vatican's role as a collector of knowledge, technological, mystical, or otherwise, is consistent with its historical position as both spiritual and intellectual authority. The Church often commissioned the copying of Greek, Roman, and Islamic texts during the Middle Ages, preserving knowledge that might have otherwise vanished during periods of upheaval. In this light, the archives are not merely religious repositories. They are a form of human memory, a safeguard for ideas and discoveries that could reshape history. Beyond engineering and alchemy, legends hint at manuscripts describing esoteric energy systems, devices or rituals capable of harnessing unseen forces. Some whisper about power sources that predate electricity, methods of amplifying sound or light, or techniques that blur science, ritual, and consciousness. These are the manuscripts that fuel the imagination, texts suggesting that our ancestors may have known far more than we credit them with, and that the Vatican has been quietly preserving, cataloging, and protecting this knowledge from misuse. Of course, skeptics insist that such claims are speculative. Many of these stories originate in the margins of scholarship, fueled by sensationalism or conspiracy theory. There is no definitive proof that suppressed technologies exist in the archives. Yet the nature of secrecy itself reinforces the legend. When access is tightly controlled, when centuries of documents are cataloged but largely unseen, it becomes nearly impossible to distinguish myth from fact. The archive becomes a mirror, reflecting our own fascination with the unknown and our desire to believe that some hidden truth, some revolutionary knowledge, is waiting for discovery. One particularly intriguing line of speculation involves codices from the Islamic Golden Age. Scholars know that the Vatican acquired numerous manuscripts on mathematics, astronomy, and medicine from scholars in Baghdad, Cairo, and Cordoba. Some of these texts describe sophisticated instruments, celestial calculations, and chemical knowledge far beyond their time. It is plausible that some of these manuscripts have never been fully studied. They may contain insights into mechanics, optics, or pharmacology that challenge conventional historical timelines. If so, the Vatican archives may house not only religious and mystical knowledge, but also the precursors to modern science and technology. The broader pattern is clear. The Vatican, intentionally or not, became the ultimate custodian of knowledge, preserving texts that could illuminate or challenge every aspect of human understanding. Theology, prophecy, mysticism, alchemy, engineering, all converge in a labyrinth beneath Rome, accessible only to those with extraordinary clearance and patience. This brings us to a tantalizing question. If suppressed technologies exist in the archives, why keep them hidden? Some argue that the Church's motives were pragmatic. Dangerous knowledge, misinterpreted or misapplied, could wreak havoc. Others suggest a philosophical rationale. Some ideas are not just dangerous, but transformative, capable of altering society in ways that human institutions are not ready to manage. And some, the most speculative theorists, propose something more conspiratorial, that the Vatican has intentionally guided the course of human civilization, withholding knowledge until the right moment to ensure control, stability, or influence. Whatever the truth, the effect on human imagination is profound. The very idea that suppressed technologies might exist beneath St. Peter's Basilica, alongside lost gospels, apocalyptic prophecies, and grimoires of dark arts, is enough to capture the imagination of historians, writers, and seekers of forbidden knowledge alike. The archives represent a tantalizing paradox, a place of preservation and secrecy, of protection and suppression, of history and speculation. They remind us that knowledge is never neutral. It carries power, responsibility, and risk. And yet, despite centuries of control, the pursuit continues. Scholars request access. Investigators dig through historical records. Conspiracy theorists trace the faintest hints in letters, catalog references, and memoirs. The allure is eternal. Beneath the Vatican, somewhere may lie ideas, inventions, and discoveries that could rewrite what we think we know about humanity. The pursuit is ongoing, a testament to our enduring fascination with the unknown, the forbidden, and the possible. As the Vatican's forbidden archives unfold in legend and reality, another layer of mystery emerges: hidden rituals and secret societies. The whispers are pervasive, tales of ceremonies conducted behind closed doors, of societies within the Church that guarded knowledge too dangerous or esoteric for the public, and of rituals that blended theology with occult practice. These accounts suggest that the archives were not merely passive repositories of knowledge. They may have been active centers where secrets were enacted, studied, and safeguarded. Consider the role of secret societies within the Church. For centuries, groups like the Jesuits, the Knights Templar, and other religious orders have been rumored to maintain private access to forbidden texts. While some of these claims veer into the realm of speculation, historical evidence confirms that these orders did possess unique manuscripts and codices not available to the general clergy. The Jesuits, in particular, were renowned for their scholarship and global networks. They collected texts from Europe, Africa, and Asia, cataloging not only religious manuscripts but also scientific, philosophical, and mystical works. Access was limited, knowledge was carefully controlled, and secrecy was paramount. The Templars, meanwhile, occupy a particularly legendary role in these stories. Founded to protect pilgrims and the Holy Land, they allegedly acquired artifacts, manuscripts, and relics, some considered dangerous or heretical. When the order was disbanded in the early 14th century, much of their collection was absorbed into church holdings. Rumors persist that certain Templar texts, knowledge of rituals, mystical practices, and even forbidden alchemy, now reside within the Vatican archives, sealed from public view. It is within this network of secretive scholarship that the concept of hidden rituals gains traction. These were not mere theatrics. They were systematic practices meant to study, harness, or contain knowledge. Some scholars suggest that rituals served dual purposes: spiritual and protective. Texts of demonology, necromancy, or alchemy were often accompanied by strict ceremonial guidelines. The idea was that knowledge of the dark arts carried inherent risk. To the practitioner, to the institution, and to the world. Rituals were designed to control that risk. One surviving anecdote describes ceremonies performed by a small circle of scholars, where grimoires were opened under strict supervision, the air thick with incense, candles arranged in precise patterns, and Latin prayers recited to safeguard the participants. The manuscripts themselves were treated almost as living entities, with the belief that their power could manifest if mishandled. Occult scholar and historian Lee T. Bing, often cited in popular literature, speculates that some manuscripts within the Vatican archive may have been intentionally encoded with cryptic symbols and layered meanings to ensure only the initiated could access their full power. This method mirrors ancient practices in which secret knowledge was hidden within allegory or geometric symbolism, accessible only to those with the proper training. Whether or not these claims are fully accurate, they reinforce a theme. The Vatican did not simply store dangerous knowledge, it ritually safeguarded it. Legends also suggest that some rituals were linked to apocalyptic prophecies. Manuscripts that predicted wars, plagues, or societal collapse were said to be studied ceremonially, perhaps as a means of seeking divine insight or interpreting celestial omens. The act of reading and understanding such texts may have been considered a sacred duty, with the potential to influence decision-making at the highest levels of church hierarchy. The combination of prophecy, esoteric knowledge, and ritual creates a tapestry of secrecy that is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. The interplay between secret societies and ritual is amplified by the physical layout of the archives. Many rooms are deliberately isolated, climate-controlled, and access-limited. Manuscripts are stored in conditions that protect both their material integrity and their symbolic power. Archivists report working under strict supervision, sometimes with multiple layers of permission required. It is easy to imagine that these precautions are not purely for preservation. If the manuscripts are considered powerful or dangerous, limiting exposure becomes a form of ritual itself, a secularized safeguard against the misuse of knowledge. Some of the most sensational claims involve rituals of initiation for those granted access to the forbidden texts. Allegedly, only a select few scholars or clerics are inducted into practices that combine reading, meditation, and ceremonial procedure. These rituals are said to align the practitioner's mind with the manuscript's knowledge, ensuring comprehension without risking corruption or harm. While evidence for these practices is largely anecdotal, the consistent repetition of such claims across centuries suggests that there is at least a kernel of historical truth. Secret societies are also tied to the protection of relics. Certain artifacts, manuscripts, sacred objects, or even scrolls of prophecy were believed to hold intrinsic power. Guardianship was both a spiritual duty and a practical one. The belief that knowledge could influence reality underscores why secrecy has always been a priority. Access is not just restricted for political or administrative reasons, but for metaphysical ones as well. This dynamic creates a tension between preservation, secrecy, and responsibility, a recurring theme in the story of the Vatican's Forbidden Library. Modern scholarship confirms that some of these orders maintained extensive private collections, separate from the general archive. Letters, catalogs, and references indicate that only approved members could access specific texts, sometimes requiring vows of secrecy. In some cases, these restrictions persisted for centuries, effectively creating a network of hidden knowledge within the broader church hierarchy. The result is a multi-layered archive, manuscripts cataloged for general scholarly access, documents preserved for restricted academic research, and texts accessible only to a privileged few, often accompanied by ritualized practices designed to protect both the knowledge and the practitioner. The allure of hidden rituals and secret societies is psychological as well as historical. They represent the intersection of curiosity, power, and responsibility. The Vatican Archive becomes not just a library, but a stage for human ambition, a place where the pursuit of knowledge, the desire for control, and the reverence for the unknown converge. It is a space where secrets are not just stored. They are enacted, observed, and protected through ritual, hierarchy, and ceremony. And it is precisely this combination, ritual, secrecy, and hidden societies, that makes the Vatican's Forbidden Library such a captivating subject. The manuscripts alone are remarkable. Their content, lost gospels, grimoires, prophecies, suppressed technologies, is enough to fascinate any scholar. But when paired with the idea that access was mediated through ritual, guarded by secret orders, and intentionally obscured from the world, the archive becomes almost mythical. It is not merely a repository of knowledge. It is a living testament to humanity's fascination with the forbidden, a labyrinth of texts, ceremonies, and traditions that continues to inspire wonder, fear, and curiosity. After centuries of speculation, rumor, and careful preservation, we arrive at the heart of the Vatican's forbidden archives, the manuscripts said to hold the Church's deepest, most profound secrets. These are the texts that, according to legend, have never been fully disclosed, not to the public, not even to most scholars. Here, history, prophecy, and the esoteric converge. The ultimate manuscripts are whispered to contain knowledge so powerful, so potentially transformative, that access is granted only to the most trusted clerics, and perhaps the Pope himself. What makes these manuscripts so extraordinary? First, their content spans realms that ordinary libraries cannot hold. They reportedly include lost gospels and forbidden theological writings, accounts of Christ and early Christian thought that challenge mainstream doctrine, apocalyptic prophecies and visions, manuscripts predicting events centuries in advance, often with cryptic symbolism, grimoires and texts of the dark arts, detailed instructions on rites, demonology, and protective rituals, pagan scrolls and hermetic writings, fragments from Egyptian, Roman, and Babylonian sources containing alchemy, cosmology, and metaphysical insights, suppressed technologies, schematics, chemical formulas, and experimental designs centuries ahead of their time. To possess such manuscripts is to hold the full spectrum of human knowledge, spiritual, intellectual, mystical, and practical. It is perhaps a catalog of humanity's greatest insights and its greatest dangers. The ultimate manuscripts are said to be physically distinct. Accounts from archivists describe volumes bound in unusual materials, covered with symbols that resist easy interpretation. Pages are fragile, sometimes appearing almost translucent, inked with fading scripts in multiple languages: Latin, Greek, Coptic, Hebrew, even symbols unknown to modern scholars. Some suggest that certain texts were deliberately encoded to prevent casual comprehension, with layered meanings accessible only to those with special training. Imagine holding such a book. Every page is a puzzle, every phrase a key, every diagram a map to knowledge humanity may not be ready to wield. Many legends focus on one particularly tantalizing category: manuscripts that combine all these elements. A single codex, it is said, might contain lost theological perspectives, predictive prophecies, alchemical formulas, and instructions for esoteric rituals, a kind of ultimate compendium of forbidden knowledge. This raises a chilling question. If such texts exist, what responsibility comes with reading them? What could a person do if they fully understood the contents? Scholars caution against imagining supernatural power in literal terms, yet even historical precedent demonstrates that knowledge can be profoundly influential, shaping politics, religion, and culture. Some of the most persistent rumors involve predictions of global events. Certain manuscripts are said to describe not only the fate of the Church, but the rise and fall of nations, technological revolutions, and even catastrophic phenomena. They are apocalyptic in scope, yet also deeply specific, sometimes referencing events centuries before their occurrence. Historians debate the authenticity of such claims. Critics argue that vague or symbolic language allows for reinterpretation after the fact. Yet the very existence of these texts, hidden, cataloged, and revered, has influenced the way the Church approaches knowledge, prophecy, and history. Then there are manuscripts tied to ritual and mysticism, which are said to provide detailed guidance on harnessing unseen forces. These may include instructions for meditation, invocation, or ceremonial practices intended to protect, enhance, or comprehend sacred knowledge. The purpose of these rituals is unclear. Were they meant to give spiritual insight, to ensure the safety of those studying dangerous texts, or to preserve the manuscript's metaphysical integrity? Perhaps all three. Regardless, the combination of esoteric practice and written knowledge reinforces the sense that the ultimate manuscripts are not just informational. They are experiential, requiring the practitioner to engage with them actively, thoughtfully, and reverently. Some scholars claim that the ultimate manuscripts reflect the Church's long-term vision of preservation and control. They may have been curated not only for study, but as a safeguard against misuse, a conscious decision to consolidate power over knowledge that could otherwise destabilize societies or challenge religious authority. This duality, preservation and suppression, lies at the core of the Vatican's forbidden library. The Church protects knowledge that could enlighten humanity, yet also contains it to prevent harm. The ultimate manuscripts, therefore, represent both a treasure and a warning. Physical evidence of the ultimate manuscripts is sparse, but accounts suggest extraordinary security. Only a few rooms in the archive are equipped to house them. Some are climate-controlled beyond modern standards. Many are sealed behind multiple locks, with access requiring formal permission, ritual, or oath. Archivists report that some codices have never been removed from their cases, studied only through indirect observation, imaging, or transcription. This level of precaution reinforces the sense that these manuscripts are not merely historical. They are potent, imbued with significance that transcends ordinary knowledge. The legends also intersect with the Church's mystical and prophetic traditions. Manuscripts describing esoteric rituals are often paired with apocalyptic visions or hermetic cosmology, suggesting a continuum of knowledge from the ancient world to the present. Lost Gospels, grimoires, and suppressed technologies are not isolated curiosities. They are components of a broader framework in which the Vatican archives serve as both repository and guardian of human understanding. In this sense, the ultimate manuscripts are a culmination, the pinnacle of what has been preserved, protected, and feared across centuries. They embody the full spectrum of what humans know, imagine, and sometimes dread. And yet, despite centuries of control and secrecy, the ultimate manuscripts continue to inspire curiosity and speculation. Every scholar granted limited access, every whispered account from archivists, every historical reference fuels the mythos. The allure is universal. The idea that beneath Rome, in a labyrinth of sealed rooms and locked cases, lies knowledge that could redefine history, challenge belief, or reveal secrets humanity was never meant to know. The ultimate manuscripts are the climax of centuries of human ambition, the intersection of faith, curiosity, power, and fear. Some theorists even suggest that the Church may have intentionally obscured the manuscript's true significance. By controlling access and perpetuating legend, the Vatican maintains both reverence and authority over knowledge that could, if misused, disrupt the balance of history. In this sense, secrecy becomes a form of stewardship, a recognition that knowledge, like power, must be wielded responsibly. The ultimate manuscripts, therefore, are not merely artifacts. They are a testament to humanity's enduring struggle with knowledge, its allure, its danger, and its transformative potential. In imagining the ultimate manuscripts, we are drawn to a paradox. The more forbidden the knowledge, the more potent its allure. The Vatican Archive, in this light, is not simply a library. It is a living symbol of what humans value, fear, and aspire to understand. It is at once protective and restrictive, historical and mythic, scholarly and mystical. The ultimate manuscripts represent the culmination of centuries of secrecy, scholarship, and imagination. They remind us that history is never only what is written in public texts. Some of the most profound knowledge lies in shadows, preserved, guarded, and waiting. As the Vatican's ultimate manuscripts remain sealed beneath St. Peter's, their influence on the modern world is subtle yet pervasive. Even without public access, these hidden texts have shaped scholarship, inspired literature, guided esoteric traditions, and influenced the collective imagination. The mere knowledge of their existence creates a ripple effect. Curiosity, speculation, and the pursuit of truth are propelled forward, whether through rigorous historical study, mystical exploration, or popular culture. Consider modern historians and archaeologists. Even limited access to censored or partially revealed manuscripts has allowed scholars to reconstruct lost chapters of history. Discoveries of early Christian Gospels, letters from medieval scholars, or fragments of Hermetic and pagan texts have reframed our understanding of religious, philosophical, and cultural development. For instance, the Vatican archives were instrumental in preserving manuscripts that illuminate the transition from paganism to Christianity in Europe. Scholars studying these texts can trace influences from Egyptian, Roman, and Babylonian thought on medieval theology, philosophy, and science. Even fragments of alchemical or scientific manuscripts hint at knowledge far ahead of their time, inspiring contemporary research in chemistry, medicine, and early engineering. Esoteric traditions have also drawn heavily from these hidden texts. Hermeticists, alchemists, and practitioners of mystical arts often reference manuscripts that are said to exist in the Vatican archives. These texts, whether fully accessible or not, inform rituals, philosophical frameworks, and symbolic systems used across Europe and beyond. The result is a subtle but profound continuity. Ideas that might have been lost to history continue to shape thought, belief, and cultural practices centuries after they were written. The Church, whether intentionally or inadvertently, has become a custodian of continuity, preserving knowledge that bridges past and present. Literature and popular culture further amplify this influence. Novels, films, and documentaries about the Vatican's hidden manuscripts, grimoires, lost gospels, prophetic codices blend historical fact with imaginative speculation. Even if dramatized, these stories inspire curiosity, critical thinking, and engagement with history and theology. Authors of historical fiction and conspiracy thrillers often rely on fragments of documented manuscripts, combined with rumors of hidden texts, to craft narratives that captivate audiences worldwide. In this way, the influence of the archives extends far beyond the confines of the Vatican itself. The modern fascination with prophecy also owes much to these hidden manuscripts. Texts like the Sibylline Oracles, the Third Secret of Fatima, and cryptic apocalyptic codices have inspired theologians, scholars, and spiritual seekers to contemplate fate, divine will, and the unfolding of history. Even the speculation surrounding St. Malachi's papal prophecy reflects the archive's subtle imprint on contemporary thought. In essence, the mere existence of restricted knowledge shapes perception. When people know that certain manuscripts are inaccessible, their imagination compensates. They fill the gaps with ideas, theories, and interpretations, extending the influence of the text far beyond their literal content. In scientific circles, too, the shadow of the Vatican archive is felt. Scholars researching ancient technologies, mathematical systems, or early astronomical observations often trace roots back to manuscripts preserved by the Church. Techniques recorded centuries ago inform modern understanding of engineering, architecture, and astronomy. Even if suppressed technologies remain hypothetical, historical manuscripts provide hints of innovation that were centuries ahead of their time. The archive thus becomes a bridge between eras, a channel through which ancient insight continues to inform and inspire modern progress. The influence of the hidden manuscripts is also philosophical. They encourage reflection on the ethics of knowledge. When should information be shared? When should it be restricted? Who decides what is safe or dangerous? The Vatican archives, in their secrecy, pose enduring questions about responsibility, power, and human curiosity. In some ways, the very act of preserving knowledge while limiting access is a form of wisdom. By safeguarding potentially dangerous or destabilizing information, The Church has influenced not only religious thought, but broader debates about intellectual responsibility, authority, and the limits of human understanding. The cultural impact is equally notable. Artists, musicians, and filmmakers often reference manuscripts, hidden prophecies, and forbidden knowledge as symbolic tools. They serve as metaphors for human ambition, fear, and the quest for understanding. Even in works of fiction, the themes of secrecy, power, and revelation echo the influence of these hidden texts. This underscores a profound truth. Knowledge, even when inaccessible, shapes the collective imagination. Its power is not limited to the pages on which it is written. The aura of secrecy transforms manuscripts into cultural touchstones, inspiring inquiry, speculation, and creativity. Modern scholarship continues to uncover fragments that hint at lost knowledge, influencing thought in subtle ways. For example, the rediscovery of early scientific and philosophical texts preserved in the Vatican archives has led to a reassessment of medieval intellectual history. Concepts once considered modern, from geometry to astronomy to medical practice, often have precedence in manuscripts carefully cataloged and preserved for centuries. The influence, then, is both historical and intellectual. Manuscripts shape contemporary understanding of human history while simultaneously inspiring ongoing research. The hidden manuscripts also challenge assumptions about the boundaries of human knowledge. The idea that knowledge can be restricted, intentionally preserved, and carefully guarded reminds us that history is never fully revealed. There are always gaps, uncertainties, and mysteries that demand investigation. In this way, the Vatican's Forbidden Library exemplifies a paradox. It is simultaneously a site of secrecy and a catalyst for discovery. The manuscript's restricted access does not prevent influence. It amplifies it. Scholars, artists, and the public alike are drawn into the orbit of these hidden texts, interpreting and reinterpreting them across centuries. Ultimately, the influence of the hidden manuscripts lies in their existential impact. They provoke questions about human ambition, curiosity, morality, and the pursuit of knowledge. They remind us that some knowledge is powerful, some is dangerous, and some remains tantalizingly just out of reach. Even without reading the ultimate manuscripts, humanity feels their presence. Their legacy is intellectual, cultural, and philosophical. They inspire inquiry, provoke speculation, and encourage reflection on what it means to seek forbidden knowledge. In this sense, the Vatican's archives are not just a repository of the past. They are a mirror for the present and a guide to the future. They show that knowledge, sacred, scientific, mystical, or forbidden, shapes the world, even when hidden from view. The influence of the hidden manuscripts is enduring, subtle, and profound. They remind us that the pursuit of understanding is never straightforward. Secrecy and revelation coexist, guiding the curious, inspiring scholars, and challenging human imagination across generations. As we approach the conclusion of this journey through the Vatican's forbidden archives, it becomes clear that the manuscripts themselves are only part of the story. The greater narrative lies in the tension between knowledge and secrecy, revelation and suppression, curiosity and caution. For centuries, humans have been drawn to the unknown. The idea that beneath Rome, hidden behind iron gates and climate-controlled vaults, lies a collection of texts so powerful they must remain secret. It ignites imagination, fascination, and for some, fear. Consider the dual nature of the archive. On one hand, it is a treasure trove, lost gospels, apocalyptic prophecies, grimoires, esoteric philosophies, and suppressed technologies. On the other, it is a space of restraint, manuscripts preserved but largely inaccessible, knowledge cataloged but carefully guarded. This duality embodies a central truth about human curiosity. The more forbidden the knowledge, the more irresistible it becomes. The Vatican Archive illustrates this paradox perfectly. Knowledge is power, knowledge is responsibility, and knowledge, when withheld, becomes legend. Mystery, it seems, has its own force. Even when details are elusive, the idea of the unknown exerts influence. Scholars, historians, artists, and mystics are drawn to it, interpreting fragments, analyzing references, and imagining what might lie beyond locked doors. This interplay between secrecy and discovery has shaped human thought in profound ways. Scholars study what is available while theorizing about what is hidden. Artists and storytellers create works inspired by the forbidden. Philosophers contemplate the ethics of concealment. Each engagement with the archive, direct or indirect, continues the dialogue between humanity and its own curiosity. The manuscripts also remind us of the responsibility inherent in knowledge. Some texts are deliberately restricted because they contain information that could be dangerous if misapplied. Demonology, apocalyptic prophecies, suppressed technologies. These are not merely academic curiosities. They are reminders that knowledge can have consequences beyond the page. In this sense, the Vatican's approach mirrors the broader human challenge, balancing curiosity with caution, discovery with restraint, freedom with responsibility. The human fascination with the forbidden is universal. Across cultures and centuries, people have sought out what is hidden, whether through secret libraries, lost civilizations, mystical rituals, or cryptic codices. The Vatican archives represent the pinnacle of this fascination, a space where history, theology, prophecy, and esoteric knowledge converge, preserved with painstaking care for generations. And yet, they're also a mirror. They reflect our desires, fears, and ambitions. Every legend, every whispered account, every speculation about lost manuscripts tells us as much about humanity as it does about the texts themselves. Reflection also leads to humility. The ultimate manuscripts, even if they exist, remind us of the limits of human understanding. Knowledge can be incomplete, dangerous, or misunderstood. Some truths may be too vast, too powerful, or too complex for casual study. The secrecy surrounding these texts is, in some sense, a recognition of human limitations, an acknowledgement that wisdom requires preparation, discipline, and responsibility. The Vatican's guardianship of knowledge is therefore both protective and instructive. It teaches us that some mysteries are meant to be approached with care, and that understanding often demands patience, rigor, and respect. Another dimension emerges when we consider time and continuity. The manuscripts span centuries, connecting the ancient world to the present. They remind us that knowledge is cumulative, fragile, and precious. Preserving it requires foresight, diligence, and sometimes secrecy. In this way, the archives are not just repositories of content. They are testaments to human civilization itself. They reflect our pursuit of understanding, our struggle with morality, and our fascination with the unknown. Each manuscript is a thread in a vast tapestry, woven across centuries, linking countless individuals who sought to comprehend the world and their place within it. Even more compelling is the way the unknown shapes action. The mere awareness of the forbidden, whether apocalyptic prophecies, demonological texts, or suppressed technologies, influences decisions, inspires inquiry, and sparks creativity. The manuscripts exert power not solely through their content, but through their potential, their mystery, and their inaccessibility. In this sense, secrecy itself becomes a force, guiding human thought, inspiring ambition, and shaping cultural imagination. The Vatican's Forbidden Library also invites philosophical reflection on truth and belief. When knowledge is hidden, speculation flourishes. When texts are inaccessible, imagination fills the void. This dynamic has created an enduring mythology around the archives. Lost Gospels, ultimate grimoires, apocalyptic prophecies, and suppressed inventions. The interplay of fact and legend does not diminish their significance, it enhances it. The archive becomes a living story, continually rewritten by those who study it, interpret it, and dream of what might lie within. Ultimately, The reflections on mystery and knowledge converge on a single insight. Curiosity is a defining human trait. The Vatican's hidden manuscripts, by remaining inaccessible, invite us to explore not just the past, but ourselves, our ambitions, our fears, and our desire to know. They remind us that some knowledge is transformative, some dangerous, and some eternal. They challenge us to balance curiosity with responsibility, to honor the pursuit of understanding while respecting its limits, and to marvel at the vast landscape of human thought, both revealed and concealed. As we close this chapter of exploration, we recognize that the Forbidden Library is more than a collection of texts. It is a symbol of humanity's relationship with knowledge, a mirror of our fascination with the hidden, our awe of the powerful, and our respect for the mysteries that endure across time. In this sense, the Vatican archives are both history and metaphor, a repository of human achievement, a testament to secrecy, and a beacon for those drawn to the eternal quest for understanding. As our journey through the Vatican's Forbidden Library draws to a close, we are left with questions rather than answers. Perhaps that is the point. The ultimate allure of these manuscripts lies not only in what they contain, but in what remains hidden. Mystery, secrecy, and the unknown are their most enduring legacies. The Forbidden Library is a testament to centuries of human ambition, intellect, and faith, a place where history, prophecy, science, and mysticism intersect in ways that continue to captivate, inspire, and challenge us. Consider the paradox: knowledge preserved, yet inaccessible. Manuscripts painstakingly cataloged, yet largely unseen. Prophecies and grimoires, apocalyptic visions, and suppressed technologies, all locked behind doors that have been closed for centuries. This duality embodies the human fascination with the unknown. The more elusive the knowledge, the more potent its impact on our imagination. It is a reminder that secrecy itself can be a form of power. In guarding these manuscripts, the Church has shaped not only history, but perception. Scholars, mystics, and artists alike are drawn into this orbit, compelled to speculate, interpret, and imagine. We have explored the layers of the archive, lost and forbidden texts that challenge traditional narratives, prophecies and apocalyptic manuscripts that warn and inspire, grimoires and esoteric rituals that blend faith with mysticism, suppressed technologies and scientific insights that hint at a lost understanding of the natural world, hidden societies and ceremonial practices that safeguarded knowledge and guided its use. Each layer contributes to the mystique of the Vatican's Forbidden Library. Together, they create a tapestry of human curiosity, ambition, and restraint, a place where the pursuit of knowledge meets the responsibility of stewardship. Perhaps the most profound lesson lies in the relationship between curiosity and caution. The manuscripts are not merely historical artifacts. They're reminders of the power that knowledge carries. In some cases, the knowledge is dangerous, destabilizing, or transformative. The Church's custodianship reflects an understanding that wisdom often demands patience, ethical consideration, and respect for limits. In this sense, the Forbidden Library is both a sanctuary and a warning, a repository of enlightenment, and a testament to the consequences of misuse. The influence of these manuscripts reaches far beyond the Vatican walls. Even fragments and glimpses inspire modern thought, culture, and creativity. Scholars reconstruct history. Mystics explore spiritual truths. Artists and writers create narratives that captivate audiences worldwide. And for the rest of us, the archives exist as a symbol, a reminder that some knowledge is powerful precisely because it is hidden. This influence is subtle, pervasive, and enduring. It shapes our understanding of history, religion, science, and the imagination itself. There is also a philosophical dimension to consider. The Forbidden Library confronts us with questions about the nature of truth, belief, and secrecy. What does it mean to preserve knowledge but restrict access? Who decides what is too dangerous to reveal? How does secrecy shape human understanding and imagination? These questions are not answered definitively, but they enrich the mystery. They remind us that the pursuit of knowledge is as much about ethical responsibility as it is about discovery. The Vatican's forbidden manuscripts also serve as a mirror of human curiosity. Across centuries and cultures, we have sought the hidden, the esoteric, and the forbidden. Libraries, lost civilizations, mystical rituals, all reflect our desire to uncover what lies beyond the surface of ordinary understanding. In the Vatican archive, this desire finds its ultimate expression. Manuscripts so potent that they must be preserved with care, and secrets so profound that they can never be fully revealed. Even today, the Forbidden Library continues to inspire awe. Scholars continue to study, archivists maintain meticulous care, and whispers of lost knowledge circulate in history, academia, and popular culture. The allure of the unknown endures, drawing humanity into a dialogue with the past, with faith, and with the very nature of knowledge itself. It is a reminder that the greatest mysteries are often not solved, but lived, experienced through inquiry, imagination, and reflection. Perhaps the ultimate manuscripts are not important solely for their content. Perhaps their significance lies in their ability to provoke wonder, to inspire curiosity, and to remind us of the vastness of human understanding, both realized and unrealized. They challenge us to imagine worlds beyond our own, to question the boundaries of history and belief, and to recognize that some knowledge must be approached with humility. And so, the Vatican's Forbidden Library remains a place of eternal mystery. Locked doors, sealed manuscripts, and guarded secrets coexist with curiosity, speculation, and the ongoing pursuit of understanding. It is a space where history, faith, and imagination converge, a labyrinth of human thought, preserved across centuries. To ponder these manuscripts is to ponder ourselves, our ambitions, our fears, and our unending quest to comprehend the unknown. In this sense, the Forbidden Library is not merely a repository of texts, but a living symbol of human curiosity and restraint. As we close this exploration, we are left with one final reflection. The Vatican's forbidden manuscripts remind us that knowledge is never neutral. It carries power, responsibility, and consequence. Some of it enlightens, some of it challenges, and some of it remains tantalizingly out of reach. And perhaps that is as it should be. For in the tension between revelation and secrecy, between discovery and restraint, lies the eternal drama of human understanding. A drama that continues to unfold beneath the ancient stones of Rome, behind doors that may never open. The ultimate mystery endures. The manuscripts remain locked. The secrets remain whispered. And yet, through imagination, scholarship, and reflection, the influence of the Vatican's Forbidden Library continues to shape our perception of history, knowledge, and the limits of human understanding. It is a mystery without end, a story without full resolution, and a testament to the enduring power of the unknown. The Vatican's Forbidden Library is more than an archive. It is a monument to human curiosity, ambition, and imagination. A reminder that some knowledge is too powerful to be freely given, yet too compelling to be ignored. Even after centuries, the Vatican's Forbidden Library continues to capture the imagination of the world. Scholars debate, authors speculate, and the public wonders, what lies behind those iron gates, beneath the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica? Section 17 invites us to consider not only the manuscripts themselves, but their legacy, the ways they continue to shape culture, scholarship, and human curiosity long after the initial centuries of secrecy. The legacy of the archives is multifaceted. First, there is the historical impact. Manuscripts preserved within the Vatican have allowed generations of scholars to reconstruct lost histories, piece together ancient knowledge, and reinterpret the development of religion, science, and philosophy. Even partial access has revealed astonishing insights into early Christianity, medieval science, Hermetic philosophy, and esoteric traditions. Without these archives, countless texts and ideas might have been lost to time, leaving gaps in our understanding of human history. The Church's role as custodian ensured continuity, a bridge between civilizations, cultures, and centuries. Second, the Forbidden Library has an intellectual and philosophical influence. Its very secrecy challenges our assumptions about knowledge. What should be revealed? What should be concealed? And who decides? Scholars, ethicists, and philosophers are drawn into questions about the ethics of knowledge, the power it carries, and the responsibility inherent in its preservation. The manuscripts are a living reminder that knowledge is not merely information. It is influence, responsibility, and sometimes danger. The Vatican's approach, careful preservation combined with restricted access, continues to shape conversations about how humanity handles its most powerful discoveries. The cultural legacy is equally profound. Literature, film, and popular media are saturated with references to hidden gospels, grimoires, apocalyptic prophecies, and secret rituals. Dan Brown-style thrillers, historical documentaries, and conspiracy narratives all draw inspiration from the mythology surrounding the archives. Even if dramatized, these stories shape collective imagination. They encourage curiosity, spark speculation, and inspire audiences to think critically about history, religion, and the limits of human understanding. The forbidden manuscripts exist not only in vaults, but in the minds of millions, influencing thought and culture indirectly. The Vatican archives also leave a spiritual and esoteric legacy. Mystics, hermeticists, alchemists, and occult practitioners continue to reference manuscripts said to reside within the library. The texts inform rituals, philosophical frameworks, and symbolic systems, extending their influence across continents and centuries. In this sense, the manuscript's legacy is living. They are not relics to be admired passively. They are catalysts for thought, meditation, and inquiry. Their presence encourages exploration of human potential, both intellectual and spiritual. One of the most compelling aspects of the legacy is the human fascination with secrecy itself. By restricting access, the Vatican ensures that imagination thrives. The unknown becomes a canvas on which humans project their curiosity, their fears, and their ambitions. Every rumor of lost gospels, suppressed technologies, or esoteric rituals is magnified precisely because the manuscripts are hidden. In other words, secrecy transforms knowledge into legend, and legend, in turn, shapes culture, thought, and inquiry in ways that transcend the physical manuscripts themselves. The legacy also highlights the continuity of human curiosity. Across generations, people have been drawn to these texts, whether as scholars, seekers, or storytellers. From medieval scribes to modern historians, from clerics to journalists, the pursuit of forbidden knowledge remains a constant. The Vatican Archive is a monument not only to what is preserved, but to the enduring human drive to seek, question, and understand. This continuity reminds us that curiosity is not fleeting. It is fundamental to our identity. It drives exploration, scholarship, art, and even spirituality. The Vatican's hidden manuscripts serve as both stimulus and symbol for that drive. The manuscript's legacy also invites reflection on the interplay between power and knowledge. The Church's careful curation demonstrates an acute awareness that some knowledge can alter history, influence societies, and challenge authority. By safeguarding the most sensitive texts, the Church exercised not only spiritual guidance, but intellectual stewardship. This relationship between secrecy, power, and influence is a recurring theme throughout human history. The Vatican archives are perhaps the most compelling illustration of that dynamic, a repository where knowledge and authority intertwine, where preservation becomes a form of power, and where access is a profound responsibility. Finally, the Forbidden Library leaves us with a sense of eternal mystery. Even as scholars publish their findings and researchers uncover fragments of lost texts, there remains the question of what has never been seen. What manuscripts remain sealed? What knowledge has been deemed too dangerous, too powerful, or too transformative for the world? The unanswered questions are central to the archive's enduring legacy. They remind us that the pursuit of knowledge is infinite, that some truths may never be fully known, and that curiosity itself is a form of engagement with the unknown. The afterword of this journey, therefore, is a meditation on human aspiration and restraint. The Vatican's forbidden manuscripts symbolize both the heights of human understanding and the caution required in wielding knowledge. They challenge us to balance curiosity with wisdom, imagination with responsibility, and inquiry with ethical reflection. In contemplating the Forbidden Library, we engage not only with history, prophecy, and esoteric knowledge, but also with our own values, ambitions, and limitations. And so, the Vatican's Forbidden Library remains a beacon, not just of hidden manuscripts, but of the human spirit. It teaches us that mystery is essential, that secrecy can inspire, and that the pursuit of understanding is a journey without end. Even after centuries, the manuscripts continue to echo through history, culture, and imagination. Their legacy is eternal, preserved in the vaults beneath Rome, and alive in every mind drawn to wonder, speculation, and the quest for knowledge.